Did you know that you can watercolor with dye inks? Today I share 3 easy techniques that anyone can do. Hello and welcome back to another Take 2 with Therese at Altenew, and today I have 2 beautiful floral cards to share with you. I have the Linear Life Poinsettias stamp set. It also has a coordinating die set, and I love that these sentiments have matching shadow dies. That always makes me happy. And I've also got the simple colouring stencil. We're going to be using all of these products today along with some fresh dye inks. Now I'm using the rose petal set of inks here, but you can use whatever colours you have. You can use any dye inks for this technique actually, as long as they're water based. And because they're water based, I am going to be using some watercolour cardstock. Now I have got the ultra sticky mat in my stamp wheel. It's really handy when it comes to this thick cardstock. My first technique is actually adding watercolour using the stamp itself. So you may have noticed I've actually flipped the stamp over. We're going to add ink to the back of the stamp. So I'm using the lid of my stamp wheel to pick up the stamp, and there's enough surface area that it's picking it up. They're photopolymer stamps, so they're nice and sticky. And I've added the ink directly to the back of the stamp, spritzed it with some water. This is just plain tap water, and then I can stamp it as I normally would any other stamp. While it's still wet, because I want my colours to mix a little bit, I'm not waiting for my layers to dry in between. I've got a darker pink, it's the purple wine, and I've only added the ink this time to the outside edges of the poinsettias. I spritzed it again and then re-stamped. Now because there's a little gap over this cardstock here, like a little air gap which fits the photopolymer stamp, I didn't have to wait for this to dry in between stamps. And basically I just used the 3 floral images out of the stamp set and covered the whole front of my card. Well, it's not my card yet, it's like the panel that's going to go on my card, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, which is actually the size of the watercolor paper set that Altenew sell. It's a beautiful cardstock, this one. Once I'd stamped out all my images, I did make sure to wait till it dried properly before I came in and re-stamped the actual images again. Now obviously these images are going to be reversed, so they're not going to fit perfectly, and I don't want them to fit perfectly. You might notice here I'm protecting my panel with just a sheet of, this is just the packaging off the stencil, but you can use whatever you've got. I couldn't find my acetate, but you can use whatever you've got just to protect the actual panel from getting ink on it until I know exactly where I'm going to stamp. But I just basically moved the stamps around and picked the best portion of the flower. When I say flower, it's not really. Poinsettias are actually leaves of the bracts or the leaves of the poinsettia, and re-stamped the actual outline image over top. I did that for all of these images, and I just love that real washy, loose look that this gives. So if you're not confident to watercolor, this is a great way to get that watercolor look. I stamped a simple sentiment from the Modern Poinsettias set, and I've added the whole panel to the front of a card. I used a nice strong adhesive. It's the 1/2 inch ultra sticky tape from Altenew. You can use whatever strong adhesive. If you prefer a liquid glue, that would work well as well. And I added a jet black word joy from the bold alphabet die set, and I did pop that up. So moving on to our second card design now, and I've got 2 more ways that I'm going to share how to add watercolor to your designs. I told you it's easy so far. These ones are just as easy. I'm grabbing a piece of the watercolor paper pad. It's a nice bright white smooth cardstock that tolerates water beautifully, and because of the size of the pad you get a heap of paper out of it. I've stamped 2 of the poinsettia images using the obsidian ink because it's a pigment ink, and I know that it's not going to bleed when I add the watercolor or the water over top of the image. I've got the ink and just added the ink directly to a non-porous surface. I'm using the medium palette here, and then I'm using it like paint. I'm adding a bit of water to it, picking up the ink with any brush. I'm using a round brush here. I think it's a size 4 or maybe the size 8. And this time I'm actually painting through the coordinating stencil. How easy is that? The trick here is not to add too much water because it can bleed beneath the stencil and it will give you a more of a washy look if that's the look you're going for, or you could just freehand it if you don't have the stencil. This is a very simple linear design and this watercolor look is perfect for this. I did come in and add some of the Cosmic Berry, a darker color, just to the center of the poinsettias as well. So for my third technique, I'm just literally going to be painting with the dye ink. I've added the green ink directly to the palette again, and I'm picking up the ink with some water on my brush and just painting it as you would any kind of watercolor. I wanted to add some depth, just a little brush of darker color. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't need to be neat because we're going to cut these up in a moment. And then I've set all that aside to dry while I create a embossed background. I have some navy cardstock here and I've run it through my die cutting machine. And this is the Perfect Poinsettias 3D embossing folder, and it's a beautiful folder. I've added some 1/2 inch ultra sticky tape again just to make sure that it holds well because there is a lot of dimension on this panel. And now to create my leaves, I'm cutting up my poinsettias and just placing them until I feel happy. I adhered them directly to the card base and then also popped some up and created my bouquet with 2 of the flowers and 3 of the leaves, and that sort of gives it a nice sort of balanced look. I did stamp out the sentiment on the same watercolor cardstock just so I wanted it to match the flowers, and I cut a second piece of cardstock and layered them up together because I did want to pop that up on the front of the card. So if you've never used watercolors before and you're not sure if it's your thing, using your dye inks that you already have is a great way to stretch your products. Give it a try before you invest in watercolors. You can simply paint with them like I did with the leaves here, or if you've got a stencil, you can paint through a stencil like I did on these poinsettias. And this is a really fun way. Use the reverse of your stamp, spritz it with water after you've added the dye ink and get a totally different look. Let me know in the comments below which one's your favorite today and if you're going to try any of these techniques. Till next time, bye.
Hello there! Did that video just spark your creativity? And do you want more project ideas and inspiration videos too? Well, if you do, please make sure that you subscribe to the Altenew YouTube channel. Also, make sure that you do click that notification bell so you don't miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye bye!